Yo, what is going on, guys? It is Jonathan back again with the weekly scuffle, and I'm here to talk about the entire Terence Crawford versus Israeli Madrimov card. And honestly, this is one of the best cards that the US has seen in quite a while, thanks to Turkey Alashik and Riyadh season. And honestly, I think this is a great move for boxing. A lot of the promoters have started to work together thanks to Turkey and all the events that he's been putting on and the money he's been dishing out. And honestly, I think this is great for the sport because we have great cards and great fights like this. Starting off with Andy Cruz versus Antonio Moran. Honestly, Antonio Moran, he got knocked out by Devin Haney, I believe. And this kind of puts Andy on the path to potentially be the next change of the guard in the lightweight division, along a Keyshawn Davis and some younger prospects like Floyd Schofield and these type of new age guys definitely that are coming through and eventually challenge, Tank Davis for that top spot. And honestly, I think this fight is very important for Andy's development. I think it will definitely put him closer to championship contention and contender status. And it's definitely going to be very interesting to see if they could get him a title shot relatively soon. This will be his fourth fight, but I think if he beats Moran in devastating fashion, that Keyshawn fight could definitely be made, especially with Riyadh season being involved. And honestly, I expect Andy to go out there and perform well. I expect him to fully win this fight. I just really want to see if he could get the TKO or a KO victory. I do predict for now that it will be a KO, just because Devin Haney, he isn't the greatest power puncher and he was able to take on Moran. And I think Andy Cruz is right up there with the Devin Haneys of the world in terms of skill and talent. So that definitely isn't out of the picture for me. And I think this fight is going to be a great fight while it lasts. And then we have David Morrell, another Cuban boxer, versus Hot Rod. Sorry, can't pronounce that name, but I think this is a great fight for David. I think David could definitely challenge the likes of Canelo, Benavidez, Bivol, Beterbiev, all these types of fights. I think David could fight in, be competitive in, and definitely win some of these fights. And if he goes out there and he dismantles Hot Rod like I think he's gonna do, I expect David to also win this by KO. I think it sets him up to be one of the top guys at 175, not just for Bivol and Beterbiev, but for David Benavidez. I think that's definitely a huge fight down the line if these two ever decide to actually get it on, which I hope happens sooner than later with Riyadh season involved with David Moreno. And then next up we have the battle of the big boys. America's next superstar, America's last hope at the heavyweight division, Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakoli. And while I like Jared Anderson, I like the potential he has. I just don't think his heart is truly in the game of boxing. And I think Martin Bakoli is an experienced guy. And I think this is going to be a fight that either makes or breaks Jared Anderson. My heart wants to say Jared Anderson wins this fight, but I got to go with my brain here. And I think Martin Bakoli will win by TKO early on. I'm all for Jared Anderson proving me wrong, but just his attitude towards boxing and the things he said, I don't know if he really has it in him to become a world class and a great championship level fighter in the heavyweight division. But this is definitely the fight to prove it. Can he have that Daniel Dubois leap where he shows that I can compete with these top guys and I could definitely be a problem for some of them. We're about to find out, and I think it's gonna be now or never for Jared Anderson. And with that being said, another heavyweight fight. The big boys, another big baby, Jarrell Miller versus Andy Ruiz. Honestly, this is a great fight. Two of the better American boxers. And while Andy Ruiz is Mexican, he is somewhat considered an American boxer. But regardless, I think both these guys are or have the potential to potentially disrupt the heavyweight division currently. The winner of this fight could definitely go on to fight someone like Joseph Parker or Zile Zhang or some of these top guys that are coming up right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when these two fight. I think Andy Ruiz should win this. I expect him to win this. I predict him to win by KO, especially if Danny Dubois was able to do it. The only question I have is, will the inactivity really hurt him to the point where Big Baby Miller could actually hurt him and potentially even stop him? I know Big Baby lost a lot of weight coming into this fight. I believe he was 330 going into the Dubois fight, and now he's around 300, which, 30 pounds is a lot, even for a heavyweight. And I think losing that weight could either be very beneficial for his gas tank, or it could potentially hurt his chances, hurt his power, hurt his chin, and, be detrimental for him, especially since he's not geared up on the juice like he used to be. So it's going to be very interesting to see, but I do expect Andy Ruiz to come out of this fight the winner by KO. And of course, we have the next fight on the card, Isaac Pitbull Cruz versus Jose Valenzuela. And honestly, I think this is the Tank Davis title eliminator. The winner of this fight is going to get that big payday versus Tank, It's very interesting because I heard a report a couple months back where they said Tank might move up for Pitbull. I'm not sure if that's the case. It would make Tank a legitimate three-way world champion, which, that could be a good thing for his resume and his career, but I don't know. I don't know if they make that fight. I don't know if Pitbull comes down. The money for Tank is definitely enticing, but I believe Pitbull is struggling to make 135, which is weird when you take into account his stature. But regardless, I think the winner of this fight will definitely be next up to fight Tank. I think Jose is a solid fighter. He's had his losses, but he's come back and he's won in dominant fashion recently. So I think this is going to be a barn burner while it lasts. But I do expect Isaac to come out on top. Granted, Jose is a live dog. I really like the way he fights. His fight against Colbert was something to watch. It was definitely great. I think he got robbed that first fight, but regardless, I think Pitbull will come out. I think it'll be a TKO victory. I think at 140 he's really growing into the division, and the fact that Jose has to come up to fight Pitbull, I think that definitely is in Pitbull's favor. And Pitbull's star keeps shining. A lot of people come out for him now, and I think that also takes into account. I think he performs better when people are cheering him on, rooting for him, and he definitely is a spirited fighter when it comes to that. With that being said, I predict Pitbull by KO in the later rounds. I believe there's going to be a slugfest or mid to late rounds. And finally, we have Terence Crawford versus Israil Madrimov, the fight that we've all been waiting for, but not quite. Of course, everyone's been waiting for Terence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. But either way, I think Israel is definitely one of the better fights at 154 for Bud. And with Riyadh season, I think this is actually the perfect thing that could have happened for Bud because he's getting massive paychecks in massive arenas as the main event, like he should have been getting his whole career. He's getting that attention, that promotion from the zone. And, he's definitely has the ability to become a three-weight undisputed. I believe the Canelo fight was also let me become undisputed in a third weight class as fast as possible. But regardless, if he wins this fight, he would be the WBA World Super Welter Champion and the WBO Interim World Champion. And that's the kicker here. The fact that if he becomes the WBO Interim World Champion, potentially Sebastian Fundora would have to fight Errol Spence to keep that belt. Or I should say he should fight Terence Crawford to keep that belt instead of fighting Errol Spence. And it could give a chance for Crawford to win that belt plus the WBC that Fundora also holds, which could be great for him. And it will just mean one more belt for him to gain and become undisputed at 154. And in that case, I think Canelo would definitely be willing to fight him, 3-time undisputed, potentially 4 if he becomes undisputed at 168. If William School becomes the IBF champion, maybe he fights him first and then fights Canelo for undisputed. I think Canelo for now, he's content on fighting the likes of Berlanga and Mugia, but potentially, maybe 1.5, 2 years down the line, that Crawford Canelo fight is massive. It's built up, and it definitely makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. But right now, Bud has to get through Israil Madrimov. I think this is going to be a tough fight for him. I think Israil is probably the second or even third best fighter at 154 without Bud. And I think this has potential to not be an upset because I don't think Bud will lose, but I think it could be a tougher fight than Bud expects. And definitely there could be a chance Bud gets hurt. He's moving up. He's been inactive for a while now. And I think it's going to be a great fight. Regardless, I expect Bud to finish him and finish him late. I think his power will carry up, but that is the main thing that I want to see. I want to see how much his power carries up from 147 to 154. He was in that insane knockout streak at 147, so it's going to be very interesting to see, but I do expect Bud to get a knockout between round 9 through 11. And with that being said, we'll see how this plays out. I'll see you next time. Peace.